Sometimes in your prayer time, folks, because America is what the Bible calls the slave to the lender, if you sometimes might want to take time and reach out to our Heavenly Father and pray for our nation and ask that it be take of our Father's wisdom so that we can truly restore this great republic for our future generations. Well, as we continue our gathering this afternoon, I want to introduce to you Terry Davis, who has a few words of wisdom.
One of the great honors in my life was being asked to join the Reagan administration in 1980 or 81 after he was sworn in. And I'm just going to give you some very quick reminiscences that kind of explain what I saw of our president, what a great man he was. The first thing was when I was sworn in. President Reagan wanted each of his appointees to have two cards. The first card said you can accomplish much if you don't care who gets the credit. And you know, until they declassified some national security documents in the early 90s, we never knew how much Ronald Reagan personally led the rapprochement with the Soviet Union. It wasn't until we saw the National Security Council minutes that we knew it was Ronald Reagan, not the Department of State, and not even his closest advisors, that led that charge through his personal correspondence with the Soviet leaders in his own handwriting. The second card that he gave us was to do your job, you have to be ready to lose it. And I'll tell you, I was lucky to serve with enough Reagan appointees that so many of them went out there, and some did. If you remember the head of the EPA, Ann Burford, and others, they were doing their jobs, and the bureaucracy and the Washington media came out and got them. And that's what they did. They really came out and got him. There was no good reason other than bad press. And what would happen is then somebody, one of the, usually Jim Baker, would come and talk to the person and say, you know, the president will never fire you, but in his interests, you should really resign. And then the person would resign. But the only person that didn't do that was one appointee from Montana who told Jim Baker, if the president wants me to resign, he can come tell me. And that person served all 8 years. Anyway, let me talk about the primary in Michigan when Reagan was running against George Bush. Now the polls had him in the lead, so when he was down staying at Renaissance, all three of the leaders of the major three automotive companies wanted to meet him. And Ronald Reagan knew why they wanted to meet him. They wanted to talk him into quotas. He was, you know, a free trade man. So I was down there, and every time I'd take one in to introduce him to Governor Reagan, Reagan would start telling jokes. And for the half-hour appointment, he'd use 25 minutes telling jokes. And then he'd turn to the CEO, or stories also. And then he'd turn to the CEO and he'd say, well, what did you want to talk about? And he gave the person, you know, a few minutes to make the pitch, and he said, thank you for coming, and dismissed him. Because Ronald Reagan knew what he wanted. Now, what was interesting, it wasn't just the automotive leaders. The leaders of his own campaign who were traveling with him, and the leaders here in Michigan of his campaign, with the exception of a few of us, all tried to talk him into changing the speech he was going to give in Flint that day, the next day, and put just some remarks that he'd be open to considering quotas. And they came and they tried once to get him to change it. Didn't. They came in and tried twice. The third time they came in, and I happened to be in the room, and he said, gentlemen, he said, I've already told you twice that I'm against this. He said, don't make me tell you again. And he didn't change it. They said, you're going to lose votes by saying that. And he said, I don't care. My principles are my principles. And he went ahead in Flint and he gave a speech on open trade, no quotas, and foreign imports. The third one, and this is kind of the most moving one, is I was fortunate enough to be asked to serve on the Cabinet Council for Management Administration. Ronald Reagan had a very unusual management organization which nobody has really ever written or commented on in the White House, where he had cabinet councils for domestic policy and management in the government, which would staff out certain proposals and then allow them to come to the cabinet. And since I was active on that, I was asked to come and sit in the background as a staff support person to a number of cabinet meetings. So the first one I come into, and I'm 38 years old, and here I am in a cabinet meeting with the president and the president's cabinet, and I'm nervous and I don't know what's going on, and I walked in the room early. Ray Donovan, Secretary of Labor, happened to be there early, and he saw me kind of nervous, and he said, "Terry, come on over and sit in my chair at the cabinet table." And I kind of deferred, and he said, no, sit down and just feel what it's like. So I sat down as the rest of the cabinet started to file in, and I got in, and I went back to Ray, and I said, I don't know how you can do this. I said, how would you speak up, to the president and stuff like this? And he said, I haven't. He said, I didn't. He said, my first 3 cabinet meetings, I did not say anything. And finally, Ronald Reagan looked over to me and he said, Ray, we haven't heard you speak up on any issues. Why not? And Ray Donovan said, well, Mr. President, he said, I'm just a contractor from New Jersey. What do I know about many of these issues? And Ronald Reagan turned to him, and I was sitting in the room behind him, and said, the founding fathers, when they created this government, didn't want academics and didn't want other leaders in society. They wanted farmers, they wanted merchants. That's who they thought would be sitting here. And you're a contractor from New Jersey, and I value your opinion, and I want you to speak on everything, because that's what the founding fathers wanted. And Ray Donovan, the man, always gave his opinion. But those are kind of, there's one other thing I wanted to say, is after the campaign, if you remember Reagan, there was an assassination attempt during the campaign down in Florida. And they didn't hit Reagan, they hit the chairman of his Florida campaign staff who was on the podium. Anyway, and Tommy was in this meeting, and Reagan was thanking all of the state leaders for what they had done during the campaign. This was very early on in his administration. And he got to Tommy Tompkins, and he said, Tommy Thompson, and Tommy said, Tommy, do you have anything to say? And Tommy had tears in his eyes. He said, Mr. President, all I can say is I'm glad the bullet hit me and not you. And Reagan said, well, I'm glad you're still alive. And the two of them teared up and they started to cry. And everything stopped in that room for about 45 seconds while they composed themselves. Those are my most personal reminiscence about Ronald Reagan, and they show you what type of wonderful man and leader he was. And thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and thank you for the job you did, because when you go back home and you look at your tea parties and your 9 to 12 groups, you can see that those groups have changed the whole nature of politics in this country, and we need it again in 2012. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Terry.